The morning sun of January 15th, 1947, in Los Angeles, did not illuminate a movie set. It illuminated a nightmare. A housewife, walking through a vacant lot in the Limerick Park neighborhood, saw what she thought was a broken mannequin discarded. Something common on the outskirts of the city of dreams. But as she approached, reality struck her with brutal force. It was not a mannequin. It was what remained of a young woman. The body had been perfectly severed in half at the waist. The scene was so surreal, so meticulously arranged, that it transcended common violence. It was an exhibition, a message, and thus was born, in that instant, one of the most enduring and macabre mysteries in American history, the Black Dahlia case. But who was the woman behind the sensationalist name? And why, after more than 7 decades, does the echo of that silent scream still resonate in the halls of justice not served? If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss a single detail of the darkest stories that have ever existed. Today, we're going to dive deep into the fog of 1947. Elizabeth Short was not a Hollywood star. Not yet. She was a reflection, one of the thousands who arrived in the city with eyes full of lights and a heart full of hope. Born in Boston, her life was already marked by personal tragedies before she even set foot in California. At 19, beautiful, with hair as black as ebony and pale skin that contrasted with lips always painted red, she wandered on the periphery of glamour. She lived in cheap rooms with friends, depended on dinners and gifts from acquaintances. She dreamed of acting, but her filmography consisted of invisible roles. The media later would paint a portrait of a promiscuous life, a good-time girl. The reality was grayer. Elizabeth was a survivor, a dreamer adrift, seeking a port she never found. Her last days are a puzzle with missing pieces. She was last seen alive on January 9, 1947, in front of the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA. Witnesses saw her talking to a man, apparently waiting for someone. And then nothing. For 6 days, she simply evaporated from the world. Until that morning of January 15th, her body was found. And here, the details become so cruel they defy comprehension. Elizabeth was not just murdered. She was transformed into a grotesque work of art. The body had been meticulously washed, as if preparing for a ritual. The two halves were placed about 20 centimeters apart, the arms raised above the head, the elbows bent at bizarre angles. The face was unrecognizable due to brutal blows. A wide, ghastly smile, known as a Glasgow smile, was carved from ear to ear, freezing an expression of perpetual horror. But there was a surgical precision, a terrifying contrast to the savagery. Rope marks on the wrists, ankles, and neck spoke of a long captivity. The medical examiner estimated she was kept alive, subjected to unspeakable torture, for 2 or 3 days after her disappearance. The final cause of death, hemorrhage and shock from the wounds to her face and abdomen. What happened during those dark days? What did Elizabeth Short see, hear, and feel? These questions would hang forever, unanswered. The press, with its insatiable hunger, gave the case its iconic name. Black Dahlia, inspired by a noir film of the time, The Blue Dahlia. The nickname stuck, turning the victim into a symbol, but also obscuring the real woman. The newspapers, especially the Los Angeles Examiner, exploited every drop of sensationalism, publishing graphic details, inventing facts about her life, and in the process, irremediably contaminating the investigation. Because then the siege began. Not just on the detectives, but on the very sanity of the case. Hundreds of people, driven by guilt, mental illness, or the morbid fame of the crime, went to the police stations to confess to the murder. The police were flooded with false leads, fantastical accounts, and charlatans. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack that kept growing. In the midst of this chaos, however, a clue emerged that seemed genuine. A letter. Sent to the Examiner, someone self-titled the Black Dahlia Avenger claimed he would send Elizabeth's personal belongings. Days later, a package arrived. Her birth certificate, business cards, a list of names, and more sinisterly, an address written on a page torn from a phone book. Everything carefully cleaned with gasoline. The letter was written with newspaper clippings, a signature of a serial killer in the making. The police asked the public to help identify the handwriting of the clippings. And then official silence. What did those items really mean? Why the address? Many believe the official investigation dismissed crucial clues contained in that package. And the suspects? The list is long and dark. From a local doctor with a disturbing history and surgical skills, to a violent businessman Elizabeth had met. There were allegations of involvement by powerful figures, whose names were whispered but never proven. One of the most persistent theories revolves around one specific man, a well-connected physician, whose own son, years later, a former LAPD detective, would point to him as the prime suspect in a controversial book. He had motive, anatomical knowledge, and a terrifyingly compatible psychological profile. The police at the time interrogated him, but never formally charged him. Lack of evidence? Or something more? And this is where we reach the heart of the darkness in this case. The failures. Why did a crime with so much exposure, so much pressure, remain unsolved? The answer may lie in a perfect storm of incompetence and interference. First, the crime scene was, by all accounts, a disaster. Overrun by onlookers, reporters, and police before forensics could do a thorough job. Evidence was trampled, literally. Second, the media hysteria and false confessions diverted resources and attention into dead ends. Third, and perhaps most crucial, there was a brutal disconnect between Elizabeth's public image and her investigation. The focus on her supposed immoral life led many to treat her as a less important victim, diverting the search for more complex motivations. Based on public archives and historical accounts, some parts are contested and many truths have been lost to time. What remains is a legacy of horror. Elizabeth Short was not the first nor the last woman to be brutally murdered. But her case became an archetype. Why? Because of the photograph. The shocking contrast between the pretty young woman in the smiling portraits and the indescribable violence inflicted upon her. Because of the setting. Hollywood, the factory of illusions, revealing its most real underworld. And because of the absolute, frustrating, and haunting silence that followed. The Black Dahlia's killer, whoever he was, achieved what he perhaps wanted, not only to take a life, but to carve a permanent myth of terror. He vanished into the crowd, into the fog of history, perhaps laughing at the headlines, the theories, the impotence of the law. Elizabeth Short became an eternal ghost of the City of Angels, a reminder that some puzzles are made with pieces that will never be found. And so we remain, decades later, looking at the same black and white photos, reading the same stained transcripts, asking the same questions. Who was the man at the Biltmore? What was written on that list of names? What was the carved smile meant to communicate to the world? The Black Dahlia case is more than an unsolved crime. It is a black hole in the narrative of justice, a story that has no end. And perhaps that is the most terrifying detail of all, the feeling that somewhere the truth is still out there waiting. But does it want to be found? And you, what do you think? Among so many theories, which seems most plausible? The doctor with his anatomical knowledge? A random stranger who never committed another crime like it? Or something even darker, that the LAPD files will never reveal? Comment below with your opinion. And if this journey through the darkest side of Hollywood kept you hooked until now, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Because there are many other mysteries waiting for your curiosity in the shadows of history. Until next time.